Yeah, hi.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm very well. We just had a pretty awesome conversation, so this should go pretty swimmingly.
Yeah, we had conversation for your podcast, and I felt very happy. It was too long, but it contains a lot of information. We had talked about a lot of things in the video, in your audio.
Yeah. Did you just say it was too long?
It's long and it's informative. We had talked about a lot of important things.
Oh, no, yeah, it's definitely long. 2 hours. I mean, God,
I
it's actually
mean, for
still.
me, for me, it's long.
Oh no, it is very long, very long. The format's long, but I think that's like kind of the route of how podcasts are going. If you listen to, I mean, the most popular podcast in the world right now by far is Joe Rogan's podcast, and there is not a single episode that is less than 3 hours. And then the top five podcasts under that are all about average at like 2.5 hours. I mean, every successful podcast has a pretty like long format. I think they understand that like because prior, when you like would speak to a person, when you would speak to like an actor, when when your favorite musician would go and do a show on Jimmy Fallon or whatever, oftentimes the reason why people like really like that is because you see them doing their art, their craft. That is, is the reason you're following them, and now they're being interviewed by this person, and they're talking about their life, and it's giving you a kind of window to what that person is. And I think that kind of like describes art a lot. I remember when I was in English class as a kid, and when we would study literature, and they would talk about the author's like past and like their life and how their environment, I would always go like, man, what is the point? Why? Who cares? Like, let's just focus on what they wrote about. It wasn't until I was older that I understood how much it impacted. Dr. Seuss literally wasn't a war. That's the reason why he was able to like go so crazy, because he like saw the atrocities of what humans can be, and he was like, yeah, I'm gonna just go the opposite route and just try to make people as happy doing the most silly thing as possible. And when you understand that of a character as like of a person, it says a lot. So um but one of the things that kind of lacks in the whole format with like the Jimmy Fallons and all those things is that it's just 5 minutes. You're talking to people for 5 minutes, and the conversation is made up. You know that they had a conversation before they started recording about what they're gonna talk about. They're gonna segue perfectly. It's extremely structured. Whereas what podcasts are doing now, we're talking to people for 3 hours, 4 hours, 2 hours, is it's allowing a person to break those walls completely. Even if a person comes up on my podcast with like the idea that they're just gonna do like a simple type of like interview, recording, that is shattered within half hour. Within half hour, now we're just talking. Even if they have the idea, it's gonna be gone within a minute. I bet you felt that. As the moment we hit like the 40-minute mark and we're still talking, it quickly turns to the idea that like, all right, this is a conversation. There's no reason to me to have my guard up and to like try to filter myself. I can just talk. This is just, this other person's not going to be mad for my views. He's not going to get hurt. And, that allows a person to really be able to go in and like really express themselves. And then the people that view that, if they like the person, then I think it adds like a whole nother level, because now they really know the person to a deeper extent than their post would have shown.
That's what we're gonna talk. Before that, can you introduce yourself to my audience?
Yeah, definitely. I am A.R. Mirabal. I am a author, science fiction fantasy author. I have my first book coming out, debut, Allegory of the End, Volume 1, that is dropping early 2021. You can follow the progress on that on at Allegory of the End. That's on Instagram. We have Official Neotino at Official Neotino for Twitter. And we also have another Instagram, which is at Official Neotino. There's more of a company wide one. We have a website, neotino.net, which is basically the hub where you can find everything at. Has giveaways, newsletters, short stories that I put up for free that you can just read. And yeah, a whole bunch of different content main thing I'm focusing on is that I'm an author. That's what we're doing. And I also have the podcast. I almost forgot to say that, AR's Tales, aka the ART podcast. And basically, I just ramble about my inspiration. It started off as simply as a way to kind of market my ideas of the book, because the universe of that I've created is so much larger than the books that I've have written or am going to write. So I use the podcast as kind of a way to butter people up to the universe, kind of introduce them, so that they can kind of get kind of an idea of what I'm doing. They can kind of gauge if they want to read Allegory of the End. I hope they do. Hope dropping very soon. We already have the cover artist for it. So excited! Is going being beat up by some editors and beta readers right now. And what I started kind of expanding into is talking to fellow authors about their motivations and their works in progress. And then I just went all into that and just um, using as a promotion for not just myself, but mainly to promote other people. Because I kind of hate promoting myself. I hate saying how well I'm doing. I hate saying it. It just sounds so pompous to me. I never ever talk about anything like that. But I love promoting other people. That's something that comes really easy to me.
So, podcast. So, what do you do in podcast with your podcast?
In what sense?
What made you to start it, and what are the things? What questions that you are going to ask, and who are going to come into your show?
Well, like I said, the reason I started the podcast was because I wanted a way to introduce people to the universe that I had created for the stories. And most importantly, I kind of wanted to talk to something that I thought I hadn't seen before in podcasts when I initially thought of it, was that there hadn't been a person that was really going through the nitty gritty of going through their book. So my idea was that for the podcast, I was gonna give a full on, like almost like reality TV show type of like progression on a week to week basis of how I'm doing my book. So I would literally come on and talk for about like an hour 15 by myself, just talking to the future audience, I guess, really just talking to myself about my book, about how I'm writing it, the full structure of it, because oftentimes people like to put just like the glittery aspects of it, like, oh, I'm putting it through, I wrote it, here's the proofread and all the things, but they skip out on all the hard aspects of it, all the business aspects of it. They and oftentimes people almost admit the numbers too. Like even when they say like, oh, I spent a lot of money on this cover, they'll rarely say how much money they spent on the cover, because it's like a thing that they almost want to keep to themselves. Whereas I try to keep it as open as possible and be as honest with the people listening, because I would have loved to have that resource. When I started writing, I felt like I was, blindfolded in an ocean at midnight, you know, with no life reserve, no anything to support me, just paddling. I had no idea where I was going, no idea what to do. And then slowly I had to just find land by myself and just like, grow with the industry, grow with myself, and just really just passion motivating you through. And eventually that just turned into wanting to hear that from other people, because I kind of realized that for as much as I want to keep on talking about my own stuff, it gets annoying. And on top of that, like I said, I kind of hate promoting myself. So after a point, I was like, yeah, I really want to hear the passions of other writers. And I'm a huge just art fan. So to me, it wasn't just a simple thing about writing. It was just any person, any creative. I'm really interested in hearing any of that. So then I just started interviewing people. At first, it started off by just, hitting people up on Reddit, on Instagram, on not Twitter yet. I haven't used Twitter to. I'm building up a pretty. I'm building up a nice account on Twitter, but I haven't really reached out to anybody yet. But I have a couple people in mind, and I think like February, I'm actually going to reach out to them. But mainly, the goal was to just keep on talking to other creatives, and then I reached out, and then people started reaching out to me, and here we are. Oh God.
So, you show different thinking people in your podcast.
What was that?
You show different people talking about different things through your podcast.
I show different people talking about different
I
things to my
mean,
podcast.
their talent, their skills, what they are talking, and what they have
Oh,
earned, and their.
yeah, definitely. They have all from different genres. My very first one was actually an author that made. Shout out to him, Sam Adamato. He wrote this African myth-based fantasy series called Ochin's Odyssey. Really awesome talking to him, and it was awesome just because I had never really talked to another author to that extent. It was phenomenal hearing that his like origin story in a sense like the reason he started writing was similar to why I started writing, and it was awesome to kind of pick up on that. And I mean, we just geeked out. We talked forever. I mean, I talked to him twice actually, and I think the very first time that we recorded like 2.5 hours, but then we kept on talking for like another hour and a half without recording, just like me and him talking. It was just like awesome. And then immediately after that, I talked to a person that made a murder thriller. Shout out to him, Steve Argans with Israfel's Rising. Phenomenal, and he again he was another just like kin writer. Like we just hit it off. But again, those were all genres that I was okay with. I read murder thrillers. I'm a huge Stephen King fan. I obviously a huge fan of fantasy. I read Rick Riordan and obviously Game of Thrones, and so that just like lined up with me. But I eventually branched out to interviewing romance authors. Now, I personally just don't read romance novels normally. Now, I read them. I read them now because now that when I interview people, I always read their work, and it is phenomenal. It's actually kind of interesting. Now that I've talked to people, now I am a fan of romance. Now that I think about it, it's actually kind of awesome. It's because it reminds me of what we were talking about earlier. That as you talk to more people, you kind of just naturally branch out and are more open to things. Prior to me doing the podcast and talking to people, I wasn't a huge fan of romance writing, and now I am because I talk to these people, and even though the genre didn't seem like it matched up, their thinking was amazing, and I had such a great conversation with them, and I loved their writing that I realized that I was really hindering myself by not liking that genre.
So, what is writing for you?
Is I lost you for a second. You okay?
Yeah, what is writing for you?
So writing for me is essentially, well, like I said before, I have a huge love of psychology, of like studying people, why people do things, how. And to me, writing is kind of taking that research that you've done just like naturally throughout like your experiences in life, and then putting them in a fictional form. Because when you create characters, you create like a fictional world. And I've, even though I never thought I would be a writer, I've always like escaped into my own fictional worlds, even as a kid. I used to play with with my Legos and my Batman. I would make epic plots and with them, and I would spend all my time, and that's actually kind of where the engineering started to come into play because I would really build like their different spaceships and like a whole like city of toys. I would build it out of cardboard boxes, and I would paint them and go all out. And I would make these intense plots, and my entire house would be like their universe, right? And then I remember as I got older and started getting more into science, I made it that like my backyard was like like another dimension. And like I just went all out. It was a thing that like even as a kid I just loved getting into my own fictional world. And then as an adult I kind of turned that into like writing fiction. And then the way that I write characters is more creating actual characters as opposed to creating caricatures. A lot of people, well, I can't say a lot of people, but a major pitfall that I've seen that I can even be I've even done it myself is where you create a character specifically for a reason, but then like the person you don't really create a real person. So like the motivations for that character, even though you want them to do a certain thing, doesn't make sense because you kind of made just like a two-dimensional character. For example, a lot of hello,
Yeah.
you okay? I lost you here again.
Go
Is it
on.
like a connection? Is it a connection issue or what?
No, just a disturbance. So I just corrected it. Yeah.
What was that?
There was a disturbance, so I just corrected it.
Oh, you corrected it. Okay. Um, yeah. So, what was your question?
So you said about writing.
Hmm.
Then my next question is you. What is your education?
My education.
Yeah.
I am an electromechanical engineer, and I have minors in psychology and business.
So electromechanical engineering is a subject, and psychology is a different subject, and a podcaster, that is a different job, and writing is a different job. Why multiple tasks in your life?
Well, I think like Einstein said that anytime that you're fixated on a problem and you can't think of a solution, you just switch task. And as you're doing something else, the solution for the problem that you had before will come up. So, for example, let's say that you're in the lab and there's an equation that you just cannot get. Einstein's solution would not to be spend 5 hours cracking his head on that. It would be like to go on a walk or to ride his bike or to do something just to take his mind off of it. And in that taking his mind off of it, it would inspire the previous solution that he couldn't get to, which really was just allowing your brain to de-stress itself and find a solution more naturally as opposed to like keep on compacting that stress. So I think about kind of it the same way. And on top of that, I mean, it's just natural. I didn't want it to happen that way. I got into engineering because I mean I was interested in engineering. I got into writing because I just developed a liking for it, and I feel like I'm growing with it pretty well. And then podcasting, which is pretty natural. Again, I just kind of like talking to people. Everything was just kind of natural. I can't really like think that it happened. Like I had this master plan, thinking like, all right, I'm gonna do this, this, and that. It's gonna all be this crazy ploy. No, it just happened.
So at last, do you have anything to say to the world and to the people who watches this video on YouTube?
Do I have anything to say to the world? Like, do I have final thoughts?
Yeah.
Uh, I would just say definitely go to neotino.net. It has everything you can go. There's we have currently have a giveaway. You can get one of these custom made bookmarks, nicely engraved out of metal. You can see that you have allegory of the end right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a couple others from like different authors. I'm trying to get them out here, but can't really reach them. But you can win a free customized bookmark as well as one of these comic books. I have a fat stack of them right here. All you got to do is go sign up for the newsletter on neotino.net. You can also pre-order Allegory of the End and do all everything that you have to. If you're interested in any of that, it's all neotino.net.
So at last,
N
have
e
you?
o
Yeah. Yeah.
neotino.net.
Great. So at last, have you watched any previous videos of mine on YouTube?
Yes.
What you felt?
How did I feel?
Yeah.
It was good. Yeah, we talked about that in the previous podcast. It was good. It was a cool interview.
Yeah. So thanks, man. Thanks for giving me your valuable time and accepting to talk with me and telling about yourself and your podcast and your about how you started writing and all.
Yeah, definitely, no problem, man. Thank
Yeah.
you for having me on.
So can I put this video on my YouTube channel and on social media and on internet with your permission?
Yeah, man, you've asked me like 3 times.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.